All right, welcome everyone to Massachusetts Farm to School webinar on this very cold winter day. And this is an unusual time for us, 11:30 to meet. So thanks for making time in your day. We chose this time because we wanted to have a webinar where we could have some students present their work. So I'm very excited to hear from Springfield Renaissance School, and they're going to be sharing some sustainability initiatives that they have been working on. So I'm going to pass the floor over to their incredible teacher, John Donovan. And the chat is open for questions. So if you have any questions during this presentation, we will have some time at the end to answer the questions. So please throw your questions in the chat as they come up, or any feedback or comments. And also, if you could let us know where you're zooming in from. That would be great for John and his students to know who their audience is. All right, take it away, John.
Thank you so much. Let's do quick introductions. You guys want to just say your name and then what grade you're in?
Oh, my name is Luna. I'm in 9th grade.
My name is Nate, and I'm also in 9th grade.
My name is Maddie. I'm in 12th grade.
Yeah, my name's Aiden. I'm in 10th grade.
My name is Kaylee and I'm in 7th grade.
My name is Michaela. I'm in 10th grade.
My name is Edward, and I'm in 10th grade.
Cool. So we have 9th grade, 10th and 12th graders here. And I just, as a little disclaimer, we are right in kind of the part of the school year where, as I'm sure a lot of people are, we have midterms. We have a lot of like end of semester projects that kids are working on. So the way that I sort of structured this is that I would kind of go through like some of the events that we did, and then we'll check in with like our students about what those experiences were like, but it won't be them fully leading it, only because I didn't want to tell them that they had to create like a massive slideshow presentation on top of all of the other incredible work that we're doing. So yeah, at any point, if people have questions, definitely ask them, and then at the end we'll leave some space too. But I think just seeing, I guess our hope for this is that if we lay out what we've done in the last 2 years, it looked like it seems a little bit like overwhelming, but then if you see like the steps, I think we've kind of figured out like a really clear system for how to create change in our school district that I think is very replicable at other schools. So just real quick, I would love if somebody would want to read our mission statement at Renaissance. And again, we're Springfield Renaissance School in Springfield, Mass. We have about 700 students, and we're a 6 through 12 school. Michaela, do you want to read it?
Our mission is to provide a rigorous academic program for college-bound students in a small, personalized setting that impels and supports students to use their minds well, to care for themselves and others, and rise into the challenges and duties of citizenship.
Thanks, Michaela. And so that rise to the challenges and duties of citizenship is something that we've lean into a lot in my environmental science class, and that these guys have taken sort of outside the classroom. We're an EL education school, and so the focus of EL, which used to be called expeditionary learning, is really hands-on learning, doing like case studies. The best example of this would be a class that I saw in Colorado. They were learning about coffee, but in one class, they're learning about the finance of like opening a small business, and so they're learning math in that class. In history, they're learning about like the conditions of the workers that are working in some of like these coffee bean plantations. And then in science, they're learning about the effects of caffeine in the brain, and then it all comes together for like this final product. So it's the idea of kind of working in different classes on the same topic. And so my team's been really, we've worked together to create a lot of these opportunities that we've done. So we're going to talk about expeditions that we've done. An expedition is a case study that usually lasts between like 5 and 10 weeks. It's something that you focus on, not just in one class, but in a couple of classes, like I said. And so a lot of these were done in our 9th grade environmental science classes and in their 9th grade ELA classes, with a little bit of connection to math and history. So 2 years ago, when Maddie was in my class, we first started looking at sustainability projects, and we had this question: how do we reduce plastic pollution in our community? The kids were like disgusted when we found out that our trays were made out of styrofoam, and that styrofoam is like a forever plastic, and it just lasts in the environment forever, and that we were throwing away an unknown but gross amount of these every single day. So that was kind of like, how do we fix that problem? I'm gonna try and play this video, and then you can let me know if we can hear the audio, if I have to do something different for the audio. I just wanted to kind of show us, look at the end result, and then we can talk about how we got there. Can you hear this?
Renaissance School finished off a big project today.
Yeah, we can hear.
conference debuting new sustainable equipment in their lunchroom. 22 News reporter Dr. McLean has their story that involved more than a year of hard work.
The Springfield Renaissance School, an expeditionary learning institution celebrating the achievement of another educational journey.
4 weeks ago, Sodexo asked for a meeting with us and announced that they are switching to biodegradable trays.
Every 9th grade class in EL schools identifies a real-world problem to explore and ultimately solve. Last year's class, digging into plastic pollution.
We dug through trash, we counted it, we sorted it, we took pictures of it.
Once they had the data they needed, their 9th grade year ended with advocacy, sending 90 letters to the district's food service partners and school administrators, getting the attention of Superintendent Daniel Warwick.
He was appalled by the fact that our high school alone goes through over 281 styrofoam trays every single day.
That meeting led to talks with Sodexo itself, covering all the practical hurdles and costs associated with solving this problem.
We listened to the students and then they listened to us.
Their dialogue was productive, motivating the company to take a fresh look at the problem over the summer, finding an affordable, biodegradable tray now in use as a pilot program. The inspiring work of these students doesn't stop at the launch of these new lunch trays. The next class up has already selected their problem to solve with their expeditionary project, and it follows right in the footsteps.
We also throw out an embarrassing amount of food waste every day. We also learn.
I'm going to pause right there just because we'll talk about kind of what we did next, but that was sort of the ending point for that particular project. And so I'm going to just walk very quickly through, and then Maddie can talk about kind of like what that experience was like, and Maddie, what your takeaways were. So how did we get there? We started that quarter going to Sustainathon, which is like a conference where people show off student work that they've done. We didn't have any student work to show off. We just kind of went there to like get inspired. A lot of our students, like, we didn't really know a lot about climate change yet. We then toured our own facilities with our head custodian, which was really easy to set up. We just asked him, hey, can you show us where all of our trash and recycling goes? So he took us out to the loading dock. He taught us all about how we get paid for our recycling, but we have to pay for our trash. And so that seemed like a really easy thing to like, let's see if we can take stuff out of the trash and put it in the recycling or do something else with it. And then the fun thing that we did was this trash audit, where our students collected every single breakfast and lunch item in the entire school, and we counted all of them, and it was gross and it was fun, and we got a lot of really good data that this was just, I think, in one day. And I'll just show you the video. The kids, they piled every single styrofoam tray on the stage during like a meeting that we had for the whole school, so that when the whole school walked in, they were just confronted with what a day's worth of our trash looks like. And everything that we put on the stage was either recyclable or trash, but like that could be replaced with something. So that was a really powerful thing that that our kids did to just send a message to the school that this is something we're doing. We had some of our students talk with some of our custodians who are primarily Spanish speaking, and that was very cool because they just like planned it in Spanish, which we found was like really helpful for a lot of our custodians. In ELA class, they wrote letters to the superintendent, to our principal, to the leader of Homegrown, Springfield, and Sodexo, basically advocating for the fact that we need to get rid of these styrofoam trays. And so we sent 80 letters to a lot of like the stakeholders in our community. And then our students taught lessons to other kids in the school about recycling and about plastic pollution. And the superintendent came for a different meeting with our principal, and we just kind of grabbed him and said, like, we need to talk to you for 5 minutes. Our students brought in 1,000 styrofoam trays because there's 3 different schools in our building, and they basically said, this is how many trays we go through in a day. And the superintendent was like shocked. He was like, I had no idea this was an issue. We need to get you in front of the school committee right away. And so because of that quick meeting that our students put together, that was awesome. That led to us being able to have another meeting. I'm not going to show this video because you can't really hear the audio, but we met with Sodexo, the leaders of our food distribution thing, and said we want to get rid of the trays. We talked with them for about an hour. And then when we started the next school year, which was October of 23, it was like 4 or 5 months after we started all that, they came back to us and they listened to us, and they gave us this presentation basically saying, that they're gonna get rid of styrofoam trays. And so you can see Maddie's in the bottom corner of this picture. This was now like a year and a half ago. And then I'll ask Maddie kind of her thoughts on the expedition, but just the most fascinating thing that they told us, which is something that we learned, is like they were just as they wanted to do all of this just like we wanted to do all of this. But what I was blown away at was just the data that they brought. So I'm not like an expert on this slide, but you can see the styrofoam trays per tray is like, you know, 0.073 versus like the biodegradable trays. Those are like 14 cents. And then you're talking about the reusable trays. Those are $6. And so they're working with such small margins that going from a styrofoam tray to a biodegradable tray throughout the district, that's like hundreds of thousands of dollars that they're having to make up. And so they showed us this meal reimbursement data. And basically what it is on every student comes into the school with a certain dollar amount. Michaela, do you mind just walking over there so lights turn on? And so $4.49 is what it was at the time. And they have to then take all of these different food items and make sure that they can give everybody the best food that they can get. And then any of the money that's left over, they have to put towards like the labor cost or repairs for other things. So there's these tiny like cents that they have to play with at the end. And so at that point, we're a little more empathetic to like, oh, this is more complicated than we thought it was. The main reason why they said that we asked for reusable trays, or washable trays. We have a dishwasher in our school. Their counterpoint was so many schools in the district don't. And they did a quote for one school and they said it would be $85,000 to put a dishwasher into that school versus the compostable trays, which obviously don't have that big overhead. And so we looked at that as a huge win. There was the obvious problem of we don't have composting at our school. So now we have all these compostable trays. We're just going to throw them away. But we kind of figured that out eventually. So we're at a point now where 50% of our trays in our district are compostable. And again, we have 25,000 kids in our school, or in our school district. So it's a big win. It's not where we want it yet, but we're getting there. And now I'm going to kind of put Maddie on the spot because I think Maddie hasn't seen this whole like thing laid out in front of her in a while. And I'm curious, Maddie, if you want to just talk real quick, like what that experience was like for you. How does it feel like seeing sort of like the change that you made and that you started?
I mean, it's been a while, but it was different. Like I've never experienced a class like that before. And I felt so important. And so did, I think, everyone else in my class. Coming in, we really know nothing about, I didn't know about that styrofoam wasn't, what is it? Biodegradable. Yeah. So, I mean, learning about all of it and doing something about it was really inspiring, I guess. And I mean, like now I want to do stuff like that in college. Like I'm going to college for environmental science. And I think this class like pushed me more to do that. It was super cool.
Awesome. I'm going to give Maddie a chance to talk about what she's doing in college. I did notice as the teacher of this, though, at the beginning, this is not how we felt. At the beginning, we were like, this is another thing that we're doing in school. Maddie was very inspired from the beginning, but a lot of kids were like, this is another thing we're going to do, and it's not going to result in anything. And I had never done anything like this, so I literally had no idea if it was going to work or not. We just kind of went in with like, what if we could get rid of the trays was like the goal. And then whatever progress we made was great. So that was 2 years ago. Now, last school year, new group of 9th graders came in and we said, well, we already got rid of the trays. Now we have these compostable trays. We don't have a compost program. Maybe we should get a compost program. So that basically started the year with a goal. Is like, how do we make our community more sustainable? How do we get composting at our school? And I'm going to play again, this was the end result of our work. And then we'll kind of map out how we got there.
Took part in Better World Day today, a national event showcasing student learning that contributes to a better world. Students at the Springfield Renaissance School participated in today's event by highlighting their pilot composting program. It's been in operation for several months. Students divert food waste from landfills and enrich the school's ecosystem.
Our goal as a school is to make
make learning real, right? We want our students to know that they have the ability to make change. If kids can leave with an experience that they're going to remember for the rest of their lives, they know they can make a difference. That's what it's all about. The program follows successful efforts by Renaissance students to transition the school from traditional styrofoam food trays to a biodegradable alternative.
Cool. Just for anybody who's watching, who's trying to do anything like this, one of the best things that we noticed is like, get the news to show up, and it makes everything more real for everybody. It's so validating for like the kids to be like, this is so important that the news is here. Becomes an artifact then that you can share with other people, and it's condensed. It's like, look at, this is what we're doing right now. And they want to come, like they want to show up and do these kinds of things. And so, yeah, that was a big one. So I'm going to have these guys talk for a second about how we got there, but just, we started off the year the same way. We did a trash audit, and we found some styrofoam trays still, because we hadn't even started getting the compostable trays. But I would love for really anyone here, but particularly our 10th graders, for you guys to talk about, like, what do you remember about doing the trash audit? This can go for anyone in here. What was it like to dig through all of the trash and find all of that stuff and have to count it? What was that like, or what do we remember about that? And anyone over here can talk to.
I remember.
You gotta talk a little louder just because you're a little further away.
I remember it was kind of gross going out and sorting out like our trash, especially since we got that day we had spaghetti and meatballs. So it was kind of gross just going through separating like milk cartons and plastics and forks everywhere. So a lot of us did got dirty, but looking back, it was kind of worth it, because we kind of, I think it goes for like a lot of us, that it was worth like going through all of that, and now having like a compost system in our school.
Can I ask somebody else? And Maddie's grade level 2 years ago, it was nacho cheese day. And so there was like the chips, but literally every tray was covered in nacho cheese. And I remember that. It was gross. Can someone else talk about like why was that an important part of this whole process? Why do you think we had you all do that? What was the purpose of it? Nate, you want to take that?
So my grade also did that a couple months ago, and I remember it so vividly because we had it on a day where we had the mashed sweet potatoes. So it got on everyone's clothes, it got everywhere, and trying to separate it from the trays was a very hard task. But in the end, when we like finally separated everything and like it like showed all of our hard work, it was really like rewarding to see like this is what we just did. And then also like it like put into perspective what we have wasted in a singular day. And it was also not even our full 100% of our school, because we didn't count a couple grades because they were out of
Yeah,
the
people are on
school.
field trips and stuff. Yeah, thanks, Nate. Yeah, so I think we'll talk about this at the end, but just this piece of like confronting all of like the waste is so important, and I think is something that is super necessary, I think, when we're trying to create change like this. So what our kids did was they collected a bunch of data, and then on the left, this is Renaissance. In one day, we measured 80 pounds. So over the whole course of the year, that's about 15,000 pounds. We took those numbers, and then we got the student populations of every school in the district. And we found out in one day in SPS, that's about 4,000 pounds across the whole year, 700,000 pounds. But just to make sure we were on the right track, in their math class, they found this like standardized estimates of students based on age of how much food waste they produce per day. And then we use that data to cross-reference with all the schools. And so using like the estimates, it was about 600,000. So we knew we were in a ballpark of 600,000 to 700,000 pounds per year. And so this was the type of data that was really important when we brought it to the school committee to show that we had done our homework and we had collected this data ourselves. They believed it more. Something that we also did, we know that like food waste is not something that every country like necessarily deals with. There's a lot of places obviously where food insecurity is like a huge issue, and our school community is one of those places. So we wanted to at least try to like see why there was so much food wasted. And that was kind of interesting. Our kids wrote a survey that they delivered to the whole school about why there's so much food waste. Really interesting thing that they found was a lot of kids said at school they throw away food very often, but at home they almost never do. And they talked about you know, our kids eat lunch at 10 o'clock. And so we had a 2-hour delay today. Our kids came in and ate breakfast at 9:40 in the morning. And then they had a lunch at like 10:15. And so we don't get to pick when we eat or our portion sizes or our cultural preferences. We can't like save our leftovers at school like we do at home. And so there was a lot of reasons there. So we actually invited like some of the head people at Sodexo into our classroom, and we showed them the survey data, and we kind of talked to them about it. And we're our 10th graders are doing some work with them too around how can we reduce food waste so that it's not so much of a problem. But we haven't really got there yet with solving that. Another thing that they did in ELA class, they wrote a resolution. And so they wrote out a school committee resolution of this is what we're asking for from the district. And they mailed those to the school committee members. And then we actually went to the school committee. And so Kaylee and Ed are two of the students, Kaylee and Ed, that went to the school committee and presented for like 25 minutes. And we talked about composting and we taught them how it works. We ended up interviewing a compost company to see if they would work with us, called Commonwealth Sustainability. And they agreed, and they helped us put some of these slides together. So they estimated that, and I remember Kaylee presented this slide at school committee. This was a really powerful one where it was like basically over $100,000 a school year for composting for the whole district. However, if you divide that by the number of students, you're saying that it costs between $4 and $6 per student for all of their food waste to be composted for the entire school year. And that's taking all of that out of a landfill. And so you're not having to pay those garbage or the trash cost for trash disposal, because you're taking a lot of that trash out of there. So that was pretty compelling. These are the things that they asked for in their presentation. They wanted commercial composting for the whole district. They asked to pilot at our school first. We wanted to work with Sodexo to reduce food waste. And we wanted to just make sure they continue to get rid of the styrofoam trays. And then they brought up lots of the reasons why we needed to do this. One thing that we found powerful is we know that portrait of a graduate is like a thing that our superintendent and our district value. It's sort of like, these are the skills we want people who graduate from Springfield Public Schools to show. So we made sure in our presentation to align with like, what is our superintendent and our school committee? What kinds of like character traits are they talking about their students showing? And then how can we literally show that we're doing those things? So I liked that they included that. I'm not going to show the whole video because I don't want to take up too much time, but I do think just I'll ask Kaylee and Ed. I'll ask Kaylee maybe to share how she felt about this, but I'll just show you like just a minute of it just so we can kind of see. So we had the mayor and the rest of the school committee.
I would like to start by thanking Mayor Sarno, Superintendent Warwick, Mr. Wright, and the rest of the school committee. Today we'll be presenting Renaissance Sustainability Expedition results and recommendations. But first, let's start with a celebration. 3 months ago, Renaissance and schools across SPS
Are various ways to rid of food waste, such as feeding animals or anaerobic digestion. But we ultimately chose composting as one of the better fits for our school. Composting is a natural process.
We're going to hear 2 bells because it's transition time.
Break down the food.
Driver, like all of that, and y'all did all of that. You were able to look at the numbers, you're able to express and make people relate to what you're saying and feel it and see the benefits of it holistically. And the one thing that really stood out to me is, especially when we talk about, Mr. Mayor, the work that you have proposed around the recycling and all of that stuff, is that you all teaching this in school now means that in 5 years, 10 years, everybody is going to be practicing this. So by us thinking,
we were super thrilled with how that went. Kaylee, I'm curious if you can talk for just a second, having never gave a speech in front of the mayor before, like, what was that experience like for you? How was that? How do you feel about yourself now, like looking back that you were such a big part of this?
At first, I think like anybody at that time who was a student, I was nervous about talking in front of the mayor because I haven't done that before. But then I knew that I was doing something important, and that in order to be able to make a difference in our school, in our district, we had to go to talk to our authorities, the leaders within the community. And so looking back now, I feel proud of myself, and not only me, but also the whole my whole grade that worked so hard to have all the information and that I was able to present in front of the mayor for him to support it. And the way it went super well. We were able to connect with them and they were also super impressed with it.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things, thanks Kelly, was they didn't really know like how to agree on this. They were like was this do we vote on this? How does this work? Who is in charge of making these decisions? It was kind of interesting that in that moment we were the experts. And I just saw that Carly is here with Sodexo. Shout out to you guys. Thanks for all your help with us. So our 10th graders, I'm gonna skip kind of them checking in on this part just for the sake of time because we're gonna hear from them in a second. But so far, we've diverted over 6,000 pounds of food waste just at our school. We've had over 50 students volunteer to support composting, over 100 hours of community service that they've generated, which is a requirement for our school for 10th graders. And our 9th graders will talk in just a second about how we are spreading composting to a new elementary school starting next week. And there's definitely been some challenges, partly around funding, not necessarily the like money of our school, but we're running into a situation where the compost company that we're working with, who's incredible, one of their owners is a PE teacher in the district, who we just completely by chance reached out to the only compost company in the area that we saw that was servicing schools. And so we talked with them, started working with them, and then realized that he was in the district, and we're like, oh, that's so cool. They value education. That was part of the reason why we also wanted to work with them. However, when it came time to actually paying for their services this year, we realized they tried to go through the school district to make sure that they could become a vendor, and it was deemed a conflict of interest because one of the owners is a PE teacher at a school, but we're wanting to serve like our school, right? There's no like shadiness going on. And out of the goodness of Matt Gilman and Steve, the owners, they're continuing to serve our school for free right now because they like believe in this mission while they work on trying to figure out the conflict of interest piece. So it's been challenging because I think all of us would agree that we could expand this faster than we can, but right now we're just trying to manage the finance part of it, which is kind of funny. But also we have multiple schools in our building, and so it's hard to manage when there's schools that we haven't taught how to compost, kind of all of those issues, which these guys can talk about in just a sec. Another thing that we started at Renaissance because of the work of Maddie's grade and our 10th graders, we started the Massachusetts Career Innovation Pathway Program. It's a grant that is awarded to schools. The idea is take fields like healthcare and economics and environmental science, some of these really important fields, and give them money to design like curriculum and opportunities for kids in the hopes that then when they graduate, they'll go into those fields. And so we were designated an environmental pathway school. So we spent all last year writing an application and going through rounds of interviewing. It was a very rigorous process, and we were super excited to get awarded it. It comes with a $75,000 a year grant that we've now been able to use to pay for elective classes that I'm about to talk about right now, and like materials. We're able to buy compost bins for the school we're working with through the money that these guys behind me helped us earn, which was great. So Ed, Kaylee, Michaela, and Aiden are part of the first pathway group as 10th graders. And so we had a class during quarter one. Do you mind grabbing the phone real quick? There were two things that our goal was. Now these 9th graders are now 10th graders. And so making our compost system more sustainable and spreading compost to another school district. Michaela, would you want to talk about how we schedule our composting? Because that was a big thing that we had to figure out, was how our compost system is entirely student run. Besides our custodians bring the bins down and they take the bins up, but all of the like setup and organizing and everything. Can you tell them they're in Miss Paul's room? Thanks. It's run by students. So Michaela, do you want to talk about that real quick?
Okay, so in order to get volunteers for composting, we had to set up an Excel sheet on Google like Sheets, and every week we can assign people a day, or if people want to volunteer for a specific day, we can add them for that day in that week. We also trained middle schoolers for to do composting too, so that they can volunteer as well. So once we put their names into the spreadsheet, they can volunteer for that day. And so that entire 30 minutes is for them to volunteer. we have composting captains, which are students a part of this pathways program that Donovan talked about. And they're just there to facilitate the volunteering and just make sure that everything's going well, and just making sure that everything is intact.
Awesome. Thanks, Michaela. So yeah, we've got this to a point where it is entirely student run. And so they, like Michaela said, they take turns with the scheduling. They earn community service, which is a requirement to pass through 10th grade, and every 10th grader needs 40 hours of community service. So now this serves as like a way to get some of those hours, which is awesome. So yeah, this has been the most challenging part. And also I think just like such a cool opportunity for everybody to get to work on. The other thing that we did was we wanted to spread composting to another school in the district. And so, Michaela, only because you were one of the people that wrote the emails, do you want to talk just very quickly about like, how did we go about deciding which school we were going to work with?
So we went based on what schools were close to us, but also schools that were like what's the word? The layout of the school too. So like schools that had lunchrooms or had like classrooms that they did like specific systems in. We went based off of that. And there were a couple schools that were close to us who did that. The one that we mainly went with was Street School, which is not that far from Renaissance. Mainly because they've been really interested in doing composting, and just their school in general just makes sense that since they're close to us, it's really easy to communicate with them and start a new system in their school.
Awesome. Thanks, Mika. Yeah, it was very cool for our kids to interview. So we interviewed our students interviewed the principals of three or four schools, and it was this fascinating change in dynamic where we're used to sort of having to like report up to principals, and it very much became a sort of like, like explain to us why your school would be a good fit. It was a very cool sort of power dynamic shift that all the principals, to their credit, also did a great job of kind of leaning into that too, and really trying to say like, this is why I think our school would be a really good fit. It was hard to only work with one, but again, just like for logistics, it made sense. And so now we're almost done kind of with talking about everything, and then I'd love to hear from questions that people have. Shifting over to Luna and Nate, who are 9th graders, they started this expedition now in November of this year. So we started with another press conference. We figured out that's a structure that works really well. Have a press conference, recap what you're working on, what you've done over the last year, make any new announcements or celebrations, and then also kind of like tee up the next step of it. So you're sort of announcing to the world, this is the thing that we're going to do. And then now that you've said it out loud and everyone's heard you say it out loud, now you have to do it because people are like depending on you. So we knew that we already had composting at our school. So now it's like, how do we make our whole school community more sustainable? And so how do we spread this to somewhere else? So we came into the quarter with this connection with White Street Elementary School because our 10th graders had set it up for us during quarter 1. And so now we had to be like, all right, how are we going to teach them how to do it? And how are we going to train everybody and figure that process out? So in December, we went to their school and we observed teachers teaching like a 45-minute block. They wrote down like, what the learning targets were and how the teachers get attention from their students, and mapped out the classroom. We composted their food for a day just so we had some data to bring back to them. And you can see the data that we collected. The first time we went 106 pounds, the second time 100 pounds. So across the school year, they're hitting almost 20,000 pounds of food waste. That was kind of a cue that like, all right, well, this is a good thing to bring to their school. And then from December to January, they had a couple of weeks then where they had to come up with a lesson plan. Sorry, in their ELA classes, we realized that like custodial support is so important to this, and it impacts them as much as anybody. And so in their ELA class, they wrote letters to the head of the custodial for the whole district, Matt Ashford, and they basically talked about why composting is so important and asked to set up a training program for custodians who are composting. So your school is going to start composting, your custodial staff needs to go through this training to talk about why it's important, like how to do it, and just make sure that everyone's roles are really clearly identified. We learned that that's super important. And so we just, I think you guys just mailed those like within the last week or two. So hopefully we're gonna hear back from him and we can help him plan that for next year. The last 2 weeks in my class, ninth graders have been working super hard to create lesson plans. And we broke down all the parts of a lesson plan, just like we as teachers do. And we looked at examples, and they were in charge of like, what are the kids doing for the do now? What's their activity look like? How are you going to check for understanding? It was super cool. And I think it was definitely a little bit stressful for some of them, but also fun. This is actually some slides from Luna's group. We talked about like, how can we take the weight that they produced and put it in a way that little kids can understand, because we were teaching kindergarten all the way through 5th grade. So they had 18 classrooms that we were in. And so we thought, you know, making it as an analogy of like an animal or something that they can conceptualize was really good. So 38 grizzly bears worth of food in a year is a little easier to understand for little kids. But also just making them like think about where their trash goes and talking about it, and writing all of their information in like simple language that was effective. It was like the coolest thing that I can't say the coolest because then my other students will think that what they did wasn't the coolest. It was one of the coolest things I've seen, and I want to hear from Luna, and Nate, maybe Luna, if you want to talk. What did you like about creating your lesson plan? I did watch Luna practicing the day we went, and she was practicing doing like a little thumbometer check-in where it's like thumbs up if it's this or to the side. And that makes her teachers proud when she does the little teacher moves. So Luna, what was that experience? Not teaching the lesson plan, but like going through trying to like create it and think about what would work for kids.
What I liked about creating the lesson plan was like we were kind of able to like go back into everything that we learned, and just like I just liked like knowing that we were teaching younger kids stuff that we only learned like now in 9th grade, and they're getting like such a big head start into something that's like so big, so impactful and important. And I just liked like designing the slides as well, and like having to come up with like our own DLT and our do now, and coming up with our own activities for the kids to do, which was really fun because yeah, it was just fun getting to create the activities. I think that was my favorite part of it.
Awesome. Thanks, Luna. Nate, I'm gonna ask you a question in a second. So last Friday, literally less than a week ago, we went back to White Street with our lesson plans and all our materials, and it was like a tight window. It was like we showed up, 5 minutes later, the kids are in the building and they're teaching. And it just went so well. And like every kid rose to the occasion. And it was just amazing to see like all the hard work that they put into it. That's something that as a teacher that I've learned is like an authentic audience, which is something they talk about in EL education. You have to have an authentic audience that you're presenting to. And if you do, then everyone's going to rise to that and make sure it's really good. And if it's just, let's create a poster and let's show the school like that this is important, but then nothing's coming from it, then everybody kind of rises to that, which is a little bit lower of a bar. So like making it real and a real audience was really important. Nate, I'd love to hear from you about just like, how did your lesson go? What grade level did you teach? How did you think it went? What did you like about it? Was it effective? Kind of any of your thoughts?
So I taught 1st grade, and to me, the biggest, what I liked about it was how we were able to teach the 1st graders, and how we were able to make it more on their level, you could say, so that they would understand what we were trying to say in a way that could help prepare them for what they were going to do in 9th grade, or what they're trying to learn in 9th grade. So, one thing that my group's goal was trying to make a physical like manifestation of like what we're trying to teach them. So we split the kids up into 3 groups, and we gave each group 2 like charts with trash and compostable, and we took cards with food items and utensils and napkins, and we had them tell each one, or there was 4 of us in our group, and each person had a group. So we were able to test the kids' understanding of what goes into the trash and what goes into composting. And by the end of it, we made physical charts that could be hung up in their classrooms that they could refer back to when composting. And I think that is one of the best tools that we were able to create, because it helps when, oh, I don't know where my bag of chips go, and they can refer back to the chart that's now hung up in their classroom permanently, that so they know where it goes.
And that was cool because that was not what I had thought of. I had thought in my head of like, if I'm doing this, I'm gonna have them do a sorting activity where they put one in one bucket and one in the other bucket, but then they don't have an anchor chart. And there were other groups that were like, no, we're gonna do the chart because then we can keep it in the classrooms. So that was really cool. Just real quick, and then we'll turn it over for questions. What's next for us? Yesterday after school, actually, myself and one of my 10th graders, we went to White Street and we talked to their staff, the elementary school. And my student Jocelyn, who was a graduate of White Street Elementary School, now she's in 10th grade. We got to talk to them about just like, here's why we're doing this, here's where your school fits in, and here, Jocelyn, to say like, here's why you as teachers, please do this and do it well and help your kids because it's so important. And like, look what it's done for our school. It's going to do it for your school too. So that was a really nice moment. White Street, they're starting composting on Monday. So they are like all the teachers are bought in, the kids are bought in, and now we have another school that's going to be doing this. And so our hope moving forward, not our hope, but like what we will do moving forward is now what's the next school and the next school. And so we've created like this system now that seems like it's really easy go to the principals who say yes the quickest and the easiest first. And then once we have all those schools, then we talk to maybe some of the schools that are a little bit more just concerned or resistant and kind of show them, we'll look at all these schools are doing it. You guys can do it too. I did want to give time for Kaylee, Michaela, and Maddie to talk about what's happening next year, but I'd also just curious about like what questions people have. So that I don't know if you think it'd be better to maybe switch it over to questions. And then if we have time, we can come back and they can share some things they're doing outside of the classroom. What do you think?
Sure. Sure. Well, this is so incredibly inspiring at a time where I think your audience that's in here today really is excited to be inspired. So thank you all for taking time out of a busy school day. You have a lot of comments in the chat that we can read, but does anyone have a question? Any attendees right now have any questions? And if you do, if you could throw them in the chat, then we can get them answered. So can you see the chat, John?
Yes, actually I can. Let me just
So
scroll
while
down.
people are thinking about any questions, you can actually, and also if you have a question, you can also raise your hand and I have the capacity to get you to talk. So if anyone has a question and they just want to say it, just use that little raise hand icon. And I'm going to tell all of the students behind you, John. Let's see. You have Maddie, congratulations on your environmental college pursuits. That's super exciting. And you all said some super things. And you had a comment from a garden educator, Kira Wilk, who is really excited that the conversation has come around how to compost organic waste from schools. That's something that has been on Kira's mind. And Mass DEP has a statewide school waste reduction and diversion working group called Green Sword, and anyone who works with or volunteers in a school can join. So if you're all interested, they have a quarterly meeting on Zoom and 4 working groups focusing on school policy, food waste, organics, reusable, and events. So if you're interested, please email to get access to resources, and John, I can get you that email. They also
that'd be great.
the Green Team and Recycling Works can help with education and implementing your programs. Unfortunately, they don't have a group for students yet, but they'd love the advisors of your program to join in. And
that sounds great. Thank you, Gail.
Thanks, Gail, for putting an email in there. Does anyone have any questions or should we hear the rest? I'm not seeing any questions, so
Cool.
why don't you lead us through the rest of what you're
Yeah,
going to do?
I'll let these guys talk about what they're doing outside of school. I just put this like little list together because I think this is and I literally just made this up this morning. It's not like an official, it's not a academically sanctioned framework, but it's just like the tool that the way that we've thought about kind of creating change is like identify a problem. We have styrofoam trays are bad, or we have all this food waste, but no composting. And then it sounds backwards, but like set up a meeting with your school committee or with like decision makers or something like right away. And I think just doing that lights a fire under everyone of like, well, now we have to present to the school committee, so we better like do a good job learning about all this stuff and creating a solution. I think if you don't do that early on, then it's easy to kind of like give up or just not go as ambitious. But if you have like a high stakes presentation or something that you're preparing for, or that your kids are preparing for, it makes it a lot more real. And then just like collecting data, right? Like doing the trash audit, if that's what you're focusing on, learning about the problem, learning about solutions, kind of exploring the solutions, and then ultimately presenting to whoever your stakeholders or your decision makers are and saying like, this is the data we've collected. Here are our recommendations. Like, please help us fix this. But then also holding them accountable. Everybody loves to like say in the moment, yes, this is great, we're totally on board. But obviously like they have budgets and like you're not the only person who's came to them that day talking about an issue that needs to be solved. So making sure there's like built-in accountability and follow-ups, you know, and like having those kind of, let's meet again during this time so that we can check on our progress. And then just revise it. If it's, can you now do the same thing at another school? I think a cool thing that I would love for us to be at a point in like a year or two is maybe we can just take this and just go to like a school district instead of the school, right? And just say, hey, this is what we've done in our district, go to a small school district. And now instead of doing it at a school, you're doing the same thing, but you're hitting 5 schools at once. And I was not doing this 5 years ago as a teacher. I will just say like, I was very much like not getting involved in a lot of this stuff because it seemed overwhelming. And then once I first did it, I was like, oh, this makes sense. And I think that a lot of our students, we kind of all were in that same boat together. Once we kind of dove in as a group, we realized it's actually a lot easier than it sounds.
John, you do have 2 questions in the chat.
Cool.
You have, along with some praise, you have a question from an incredible garden educator in Boston, who says it seems like for a lot about the process, people were very supportive, which is great. Were there any obstacles throughout the process, and how did it feel like to deal with them? That was one question, and then there's
I'm gonna just for like the politicalness of answering. I will say that a challenge that I think our students have had. We started this program, and it didn't come from the top down, which it does in a lot of districts. Somebody from outside says, we're going to start composting as a district. Everyone starts composting. We as students said this is something we wanted to do. And it's taken some structuring of like, what does it look like in our cafeteria? And what are the admin's role and custodial roles? What are like the people's roles in our building? We've sort of asked custodians to change their responsibilities, but we haven't changed their contracts. We haven't changed like their compensation for any of that stuff. And so there have been some challenges with us just trying to figure out like, we want this thing to happen, but how do we make sure that all of the adults can support this and make it happen? And that has been a challenge, whether it's just communication or we kind of just came into it real hot and then didn't have a lot of time to like put all that stuff together. So I think we have a really good lens as a group now. And I think our students would agree, like going into a school, making sure that school, everyone's identified roles and responsibilities ahead of time, because we tried at our school, but that has been a little bit of a challenge. And then also just the kind of like not the funding for our school has not been the challenge. That has not been the barrier. It doesn't seem like any school is not doing this because of the money. It seems like it's because of it requires a little bit of extra work from people, and we all have a million things to do, and it's just another thing that if there's not like a real push for it, it just hasn't happened yet.
2 other questions in the chat. Is the bulk of this work happening during class time or through clubs or after school time?
I'm gonna have Kaylee and Michaela answer the like what is happening outside of the school. But I will say that I am very fortunate in that I teach 9th grade environmental science, and we test for biology for MCAS in 10th grade. I teach some of the bio standards, but I also get to spend an entire quarter teaching about climate change and an entire quarter just on the sustainability expedition project. And I know that like very few teachers in the district have that flexibility. And so yeah, I'm glad that you brought that question up. A lot of the work that we do for this happens in class. And then once like the thing stops, then there's a group of students like the ones I have here who stay sort of passionate about it and do a lot of work outside of class to support it. But this work seems very difficult to do like in a club that meets 1 hour a week. Like I think that there's a lot that can be done in those sort of environments, but I really think like to get everyone to change the way that we think, in like a real grand sense, I think it really takes happening in the classroom, which again, I know is not necessarily something that everybody can do in every grade level. Michaela, do you want to talk about your climate resilient schools work that you're doing?
Yeah, so me and two other students from the school are part of a organization called the Climate Resilient School Coalition, and we are part of the youth cohort. And the main purpose of the youth cohort is to come together as like districts, because it's districts from all over Massachusetts, and they come together, the youth come together to discuss like issues in their community and what we can do to solve them. And usually that is through like resolutions to school committees, and just like advocating for like issues in our communities. So currently me and two other people are part of the Springfield team, and we are working on mainly trying to alter the climate education that is currently in the Springfield district. And we're planning like a resolution to talk about how sustainable schools in Springfield are now and how we could change that and make them like more sustainable. And that's.
And I think Zuzu is, I saw that Zuzu maybe is on this call, which is cool, because that's who's working with Michaela. I think the brilliance of this group is, especially given like the political climate right now, that I think for people in Massachusetts, we're like pretty fortunate to kind of be in a place where a lot of people like agree that climate change is an issue, and that typically in education, like we're more supportive than other parts of the country. I think the push is like, if you're in an area where it's hard to create like statewide change, or you're not sure about the direction that your community is heading in with climate change and things like that, that you can affect your school district in a way where you have a lot more influence than you might on your state or the whole country. So if every community mobilizes their students in that school district and then gets their school district to create all of this like infrastructure and sustainability change, then sort of this like massive network of climate change sustainability happens. And it doesn't have to happen because like one law was passed. It's because a lot of small groups of students and schools kind of got together and did it more grassroots style. And that was something that Michaela kind of found out, like, and sort of reached out for herself, which is super cool. Kaylee, do you want to talk about YCLP real quick and what you're also involved in?
Yeah, I'm part of YCLP, which is a organization that is run by youth, and it's to advocate for the environment. And not only that, but we also help educate with the Youth Summit. And we educate people on the different parts and aspects of climate change and how it affects us.
And that's through Mass Audubon. The cool thing is that you guys were not a part of that before you took environmental science class, right? So I think something that like I've really realized is just like how important this like education thing is, where I think Michaela's point of like trying to get climate education in a lot more grade levels and schools, like we as a group are sort of living proof that when we like learn about it and kind of like wake up to it, that then we just like instantly like snap into action, and any resistance that we might encounter from adults is often because they didn't have the same climate education. And so we're having to like inform and do that, some of that legwork, which I know everyone here is up for. So thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. It was cool. This is the first time I think that we've been able to like talk about the last 2 years like all in one big stretch. And so it's kind of like overwhelming for us, I think, to hear it too, but very cool.
I was just, Will, we didn't get to your question. I'm sorry. Will had asked if there were people that these youth behind you have met that have been really inspiring to them throughout this work. I think you all probably have to go to class though, so.
We do have 4 minutes if anyone wants to answer that question. If there's anybody, it doesn't have to be like a famous person, but it could be Nate.
Like, have you met someone in this work that you've been inspired by?
So this is my first year here at Renaissance, because I came this year, so this is my I think everyone I met here at Renaissance really inspired me a lot, like the 10th grade team, Mr. Donovan, Mr. Decker, the teachers at White Street, the students at White Street, all of them really played their role in like really like not just gaining my interest, but also keeping my interest and showing me how well this can work if we all just like sit down and really work together to like come to a conclusion and a solution to this overarching problem that has like been here for years before even I was born. And I think that truly has like helped me a lot, like being here at Renaissance. So those are like the few people I've met.
And we do have to get off in a second. I want to just
Yeah.
selfishly say I love
Thank
everybody
you.
outside too, and you guys know that. But we have a thing called Crew at Renaissance, and it's kind of like an advisory class. You have a small group of students, like 10 to 12 kids, and you have them over the course of a couple of years, and you build relationships and connect with each other. So Ed, and Michaela and Aiden have been in my crew since 6th grade, and they're now 10th graders. And then Kaylee joined us in 9th grade and is lovely too. But it has been like so inspiring to see this group that I first met during like COVID when we were like on like virtual in the beginning of the year, and they were like 11 years old to now, see them like halfway through their 10th grade year, just like fully immersing in all this environmental science stuff. Has been super cool. And to have somebody like Maddie come in as a freshman and now be like, I'm going to do environmental science work in college, which I know we didn't get to have you talk about. Those are like the things I think that keep, me and like teachers and educators going, is just kind of seeing like them kind of dive into all this work too.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And for everyone here, we'll send a recording and the slideshow, and it will also have, if you're okay with people having your email, if they.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I'm happy to talk like with anybody. And also like if anyone has suggestions for any of the stuff we're doing, but if people like just have any questions or like want to talk through their ideas for something, that's like, I love doing that.
Fantastic. Thanks. Thank you to all of you so much for the inspiration.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. And thanks.